Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with a Bethesda Game Studios discussion video. I was perusing through my Starfield content when I realized I've talked about the rumors and leaks for BGS's rumored next game, but never what I personally wanted to see from it. More so, my thoughts on the ideas posed in those rumors/leaks. Given the name Starfield, I will be presenting some ideas I have for whenever Bethesda Game Studios decides to make a game set in space. Now I know BGS is known for their open worlds, but my first idea for Starfield is more high-detailed open hub areas and no procedural generation. I understand why people enjoy procedural generation considering it provides endless content or roguelike games. Those two offer that endless feeling of content. Personally, I value the limited quantity that developers can provide, and Bethesda Game Studios, in my humble opinion, makes some of the most enjoyable areas to explore in gaming. If you put in procedural generation, you strip away one of their greatest strengths. But also, the reason I say open hub areas and not one solo open world is because it'll give Starfield this palpable feeling of actually being a game set in an expansive universe where we can go from planet to planet. I also feel the idea of more focused hub areas can lead to the choice and consequence that Bethesda Game Studios has sort of fallen away from. Instead of having everything interconnected in one world, if the choices and consequence apply to a single location that is much smaller on scale than an open world, perhaps this can open the door for more choice and consequence from BGS. But the question is, how do we get to these hub areas and make that system work? I know the first idea when we think of space games is likely, oh, I want to fly around in my own ship. Now, I normally would agree with that for a game set in space, especially from Bethesda Game Studios, but then a viewer joined the podcast a couple of weeks by the name of Strider and made an excellent point that Bethesda hasn't been that great in the past with vehicles, and I say vehicles in quotes because I'm talking horses and dragons. I can't imagine that translating all too well when flying around in space, so I thought to myself that a good idea to add to this game would be an interplanetary travel warp system, something along those lines that allows you to go from place to place, and it makes sense within the narrative, within the universe, but it avoids what I think could end up being a big weakness from BGS. Maybe do it similar to how dragons were treated in Skyrim, where the last piece of DLC we were able to fly around on the dragons finally, and it was such a cool moment. Maybe with Starfield, get the universe set in place, get the exploration, the choice and consequence, the RPG mechanics down pat, and then give us our vehicles later on. More importantly though, because we're already talking about Elder Scrolls and whatnot, Starfield needs its own identity. I think it needs to avoid the scenario Fallout found itself in when Bethesda Game Studios bought the IP, which was Elder Scrolls with guns. Starfield needs to set itself apart, which is why I'm suggesting ideas like this that are different philosophically from what Bethesda does, but they can still work with how they create their games. Yeah, it's not an open world, but open hub areas can lead to more detail. I think another idea that could help solidify its own identity is cool gadgets and tools that allow for unique exploration and a new level of environmental interaction from Bethesda Game Studios. Whether it's dungeons, fortresses, etc., Bethesda Game Studios has made exploring their handcrafted areas usually relatively enjoyable. I wonder what it would be like if we had gadgets that allowed us to come back to certain areas and explore them even further. Where at face value, we see a dungeon that has maybe 1 or 2 rooms, but we come back with a specific tool and it opens up a special door which tells us a whole new story that's even deeper in this dungeon. Now this might seem like an instant contradiction, but hear me out, because while it would sort of be like Bethesda making a space version of the Dark Brotherhood, I feel like you can't make a space game without bounty hunting. Something like the original Prey 2 before it got scrapped and made into the Prey that we know nowadays from Arcane Studios, or Star Wars Bounty Hunter. I would love the idea of catching criminals, interrogating them for details, learning more about the universe through them, and the idea of the space factions that Bethesda could create through Starfield, not just bounty hunting, but other ones outside of that. Furthermore, I would bring back Eidan Zur for the soundtrack. I think he does a wonderful job, either him or Jeremy Soule, whichever one you pick. It's like picking your favorite child, it's kind of impossible, but I feel their soundtracks are what collectively bring Bethesda Game Studios games to that next level. And last but certainly not least, and this all ties into Starfield establishing its own identity, I think it needs its fun set of minigames that can add some world personality. That's kind of been the shtick lately, and I really can get behind it with stuff like Grognek the Barbarian, Gwent, Caravan, there was Dice in Kingdom Come Deliverance. I think mini games just add that game inside a game type of fun, where games are always enjoyable, but it's fun to find a place to go to strictly enjoy yourself mindlessly within that game you're already enjoying. It's enjoymentception. But more than anything, like I said, it can add that world personality. When Bethesda already crafts their environments in a way that can tell a story, and then you add mini games that are fun and enjoyable, that bring the society within certain sectors of this universe together, it can just be really cool. So these are some of the ideas I had for Starfield. I know it's a little bit different from what Bethesda Game Studios could usually offer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you want to see in a potential Starfield game in the comments down below. Do you want procedural generation? Do you want an open world, hub areas? What are you looking for in this game? Let's get the brain juices going and fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.